Telltale's The Walking Dead is one of the greatest games of its era, one of the greatest games of 2012, in that amazing time where The Walking Dead was on top of the world. They had a thriving TV show on AMC, and now Telltale wanted to come out with their own spin on the genre of The Walking Dead. Now, for those of you who don't know, these games are actually based on the comics. Everything there is canon, so if you didn't know that, well, there you go. But I wanted to talk about this because I absolutely freaking loved this game. Back in 2012, little 10-year-old me decided to log onto my Xbox 360 and beg my parents to get me Telltale's The Walking Dead, and boy, did it not ever disappoint. This game is amazing in so many ways, and I recently went back and replayed this game, so today I wanted to ask myself and ask you guys your opinions. Is Telltale's The Walking Dead still a good game? And if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a thumbs up, make sure to subscribe for more content, and without wasting any more of your time, let's get into the video. And I feel like I shouldn't have to say this before I start, but there will be spoilers in this video. I will be spoiling things about the game throughout the course of this video, so if you haven't played it yet, even though it's been 13 years, go play it now. And speaking of it being 13 years later, can I just say how well this game has aged? It's made other story mode games look really, really weak. And I have a couple theories as to why, right? Going back and replaying this game made me realize this is how a game, first of all, is meant to be paced. I want to talk about the pacing in particular, because the pacing in this game is what makes it so freaking good. I feel like when you go into a game of The Walking Dead, and you're playing along, there's a lot of time where you can just explore, look at things, look at your surroundings, right? Yes, a lot of times it's cutscenes and choice decision making, and it's a bit of a slower paced game. And if you're not into a game that's full of action and adventure, then yeah, this is probably not the game for you. But for someone like me, sometimes I enjoy just having a relaxing, slow-paced game. And that's what Telltale's The Walking Dead Season 1 did in particular. I don't really want to go into the future games too much, but what I will say is that those future games had very, very bad pacing issues, and it kind of made it hard to just sit back and want to enjoy the experience. It kind of just became all about the action and the theatrics. But this game did a really good job with the pacing in particular, because there was not a single episode in this that was rushed. Even going back and playing it, it was a very, very slow-paced game, for a good reason, right? And I'm going to go into a few different reasons why the pacing was so good. First of all, the actual character development that had to be done in this game was phenomenal, right? You play as a man known as Lee Everett. I'm sure you guys know if you clicked on this video. You play as a man named Lee Everett, and he finds a little girl by the name of Clementine alone in her house. No babysitter, no parents, no nothing, and he has to take care of her. And the game takes its time with making you, care for her, making you feel like you have to watch out for this little girl. That little connection that you guys make together over the course of time is honestly something really special that the future games did really lack, that overall personal connection, which is what Lee and Clementine had. The game made you fall in love with Clementine, not literally, but in the sense of she's your child, you have to protect her. And that's what made the ending so much more sad. But the ending taught us that nobody is safe. Even if you, the player, are not safe in this world, you could get bit. You could end up dying. It could happen to any character, whether you're the main protagonist or whether it's one of your best friends. Anything could happen. It teaches you not to get too attached to people in this new horrific world. But outside of Lee and Clementine, even the character development of someone like Kenny is one of my personal favorites in the entire franchise, because I think that he is portrayed as the most realistic character. He's one of those people who's all talk, right, for the most part. He talks and talks how he's going to do this, how he can do the hard thing. If it came down to it, he could absolutely be the one to pull the trigger. But then when the times actually get tough, he's not actually able to execute. And I think it just goes to show that a lot of people are like that. A lot of people are a lot of bark, not a lot of bite. For instance, when he talks about doing the hard thing when it comes to Larry, it's easy for him to do something when he doesn't have emotional attachment. But when it's his own son who's dying, he doesn't want to accept it. He goes into denial, starts spiraling out of control. And I think it's a very, very realistic portrayal of the actual character that we get in someone like Kenny. And that's the thing, because of the slow pacing, the character development was actually on point. There wasn't really any character who I thought was rushed or whatever. There wasn't really a character who I thought, this character's kind of bad, and we have no obvious signs of progression. We have no obvious signs of anything. No, there wasn't any of that in this game. But this game also does an amazing job of teaching you something about trust. That is a big theme in this game that I noticed as well, playing through the course of this game, particularly with someone like Ben, right? Ben's kind of a character that a lot of people don't like, and for obvious reasons, he screws over the group, he betrays them. But it teaches you that anybody, even the people closest to you in your inner circle, in a world that's dwindling each and every day, could still absolutely backstab and betray you. Now, Ben's backstab and betrayal wasn't like one of those ones where he was actually playing both sides, where he was trying to like join the enemy side, aka the bandits, but he was still giving them supplies, which ended up causing a raid. Duck gets bit, and Koch ends up killing herself. Right? Ben has to live with that. But it wasn't like he was doing it because he wanted to be evil or anything like that, right? It's because the bandits had essentially tricked him and told him that they had his friend. Which Ben is a very interesting character, and he's one of those characters that just had so much potential and just didn't get used to the full extent of his ability. But what I will say is, Ben was a character that was kind of used for Kenny's personal growth and development, in my opinion. And that was something where, Kenny could have been like a father figure to someone like Ben, but Ben screwed up and ultimately cost any sort of potential friendship or fatherhood, son relationship type thing that he could have had with Kenny. And one of the best things about this game is that it always makes you feel engaged. I personally don't really ever get bored with something like The Walking Dead because, like I mentioned before, the characters are so interesting. But more than that, there's always something going on. But it's not necessarily like always like this big drama reveal type thing. It could be little things as well. Playing Batman and Robin with Duck, having to do something at the St. John's Dairy, going to Crawford. Some missions are really big, some things are a bit smaller, but there's always something on your plate to kind of keep you occupied, entertained. And I think that this is really good writing by the developers, and this is something I wanted to go into a little bit, that Telltale's The Walking Dead is an obvious sign of actual passion and care for the game that they were creating. And you can tell that they cared about it too, because they gave the episodes decent length, each one, with the exception of episode 5. That one was a bit short, but besides that, every other one was at least an hour and a half, even pushing 2 hours, some of them. So you could tell that they weren't just rushing the development. You could tell that the developers actually cared. And this was the time where game developers actually cared about what they were making, instead of making it all about the money that they could make off it. And you could see when a game is developed really well, with lots of passion and lots of care, and not just done for the money grab. And I know I said I didn't want to go into the future titles too much, but the future titles you can tell were a little bit more about the money. The writing wasn't as good, there wasn't as much passion or as much quality within these games. Whereas the first season, you actually felt like that the developers cared about what they were doing. Now, unfortunately, there isn't really much to talk about here in terms of gameplay. A lot of it's just roaming around, looking at things, talking to people, and like Q spamming. A few point and click stuff, whatever, but not really much to talk about in terms of gameplay, which is unfortunately why this video is probably a bit shorter than you would have liked, just talking about this game. That's because there's only so much you could talk about. Most of what you could talk about with this game is mostly about character development and the choices you can make. And if you want to go into choices, this game gets a lot of flack, and choice-style games like this get a lot of flack for your choices not really mattering. And I can absolutely understand why people would think that. There is a certain level degree of truth to it, especially in the future games. But a lot of times, the choices that you make are more about your overall relationships with certain people. Because while big choices ultimately can lead to huge differences of things happening, for example, if a character lives or if a character dies, the unfortunate part about that, though, is that let's say you save someone. A lot of times those people just don't really get much appearance or much screen time or anything after that, because they were supposed to die in that episode right there. So Telltale kind of just makes your choice not matter. Those are the decisions that people get really annoyed about. But the thing I like about when your choices matter are little things like if you side with this person, they'll kind of act more favorably towards you, they'll be nicer to you, and that's a realistic representation, because not every single choice you make is going to make a drastic altercation in the way that things ultimately play out. And I think that's something that a lot of people miss. I think people think that if you do X instead of Y, that it's always going to result in a complete opposite chain reaction of events, and we're going to get a completely different story out of it. I think that you're kind of missing the point if that's the way that you're thinking about these choices here. For example, cutting off Lee's arm. A lot of people think, well, that choice doesn't really matter. However, I beg to differ. The choice, yes, doesn't matter as much as it possibly should, but I also think that there's little things that people miss. For instance, if you don't cut off Lee's arm, he ends up passing out on multiple occasions, which those pass outs could absolutely be avoidable if you cut off the arm. So it kind of slows down the process just a little bit more, makes it a little bit less intolerable for Lee up until the end of the game. And I think, like I said, those are little things that people do miss. So it's not that I don't think that your choices don't matter, it's just I think people misunderstand your choice mattering versus not mattering. I think that they're kind of missing the idea that not every choice is going to result in a catastrophic difference of events. So having gone back and played Telltale's The Walking Dead, the question we're going to answer, is Telltale's The Walking Dead really that good? My answer is yes. It is a very, very good game with a very, very well-written story, with a very sad ending. You know, a game that actually makes you care, a game that actually makes you care for the people around you. It makes you realize that you can't really get too attached to people in this world because they could literally die any minute. And while that still remains true in the real world to a certain extent, the danger is not nearly as high as during the zombie apocalypse. So, Telltale's The Walking Dead is absolutely amazing. If you guys haven't played it, I would recommend you absolutely go do so. And if you want me to talk about the future games, I can absolutely do that as well. Let me know what game you guys want me to cover next. What game should I cover? Is it really that good? Or it could even be an infamously bad game, and is it really that bad? Which I do have a game in mind of what I want to play next. So, thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys enjoy, make sure to subscribe. We're trying to get to 1,000 subs. We are so freaking close. We're going to get that Batman Arkham live stream going. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you all have an amazing day, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.